Hello and welcome to our channel. Today we're making whole wheat rolls. Pure whole wheat with a portion of ready-made sourdough. I use that intentionally here. You can get it anywhere. And these will be delicious, beautiful rolls. As you can see, they're quite crispy. This is what they look like inside. And they're soft, fluffy, and very, very tasty. Enjoy watching. Sourdough, which some of you might not have. I'll start again. The text is just rubbish once more. That's what you call general rambling. So once again, for our whole wheat rolls, we need whole wheat flour. I find that so silly, I need to put something else there. For the whole wheat rolls, I use 500 grams of whole wheat flour, 25 grams of yeast, salt, and a natural sourdough in this case, a ready-made product. It's a very good product that works, you can do that. Above all, it's a simple option for anyone who doesn't have their own sourdough, and it fits this recipe very well. A bit of oil and of course water. A simple recipe, but it yields wonderful, fluffy, crispy whole wheat rolls. When preparing the dough, I always start by crumbling the yeast into the bowl. Then I add my water to the yeast, and in this case I'm also adding the liquid natural sourdough to the water and yeast right away. I'm holding it up on purpose so you can see what it looks like. I've also covered up the manufacturer's label. I'm not advertising for the company, but it's actually a pretty good product and works great for recipes like this. Then I take my salt, add it to the flour, spread it around a bit, and now I'll also give this mixture a little stir. That's always a good idea because it helps the yeast dissolve a bit before. And that's the thing, if you start by working with the liquids, everything mixes together better. That way nothing gets stuck. Now my flour goes in. Well, that's not very exciting either. And now I still have the oil left here. I'm going to knead this now for about 2 minutes on a slow setting, and then I'll increase the speed a bit for another 4 or 5 minutes. And during that time, I'll gradually add my oil in small amounts. Don't pour it all in at once. That's not a good idea. It should already be somewhat mixed together with the flour, water, and the other ingredients first. Yes, I'll show you in a moment how the dough turned out. The dough was in the machine for just under 5 minutes in total. A word about whole wheat flour in general. Normally you don't need to knead whole wheat flour as much. It relies more on swelling because it can't be kneaded as intensively as white flour, since it still contains a lot of bran. Still, I want to take the dough out for you now. I knead it because I also mix in oil, and that needs to be distributed well. That's why I need a little longer, but that's not a disadvantage. So now you can see the dough here. It's relatively soft, as it should be, but still firm. That might sound a bit contradictory, but it actually isn't. It's just exactly how it needs to be. You can already see that. I can press it in beautifully. What's important now is that it rests for an hour. I'll put it back in the bowl now. It's about 23 degrees Celsius in this room. That's ideal for this kind of dough. I'll cover it in hoops and let it sit for an hour. And then in an hour, we'll process it pretty quickly into some very nice, delicious rolls. The dough has now rested for an hour. It has developed beautifully, as you can see. That's exactly how it should be. Sorry, that was a bit loud. Now I'm going to take it out of the bowl. And it's important, I'm not going to press it together much at all. I want to work with the rise it has as much as I can. The process now is as follows. I'll divide it into dough pieces weighing 120 grams each, place them here, shape them into rounds, let them rest for 5 minutes, and then shape them into elongated dough pieces. So I'll start by weighing the dough. With 120 grams per piece, the amount of dough will make 8 pieces, so that's 8 finished rolls. I shape them lightly into rounds. I don't press them together, just shape them gently into rounds. I want to work with the rise. Now I'm going to cover this with a cloth. Let it rest for 5 minutes. They don't need more than that, but they do need a little time to, well, as I said, relax. After this short resting period, I'll continue working with the rolls, shaping them into elongated rolls. A quick note here. The times I mentioned for how long something needs to rest always depend a bit on the room temperature you have. Sometimes it might go faster for you if it's warmer, or take longer if it's a bit cooler. But you'll notice pretty quickly when the dough is in the right condition to be worked with easily. And since this dough is nice and soft, just as it should be, that's perfect. Now I'm going to shape it into elongated bread rolls. For these rolls, there are 8 in total. I'll coat 4 of them in flour. This is whole wheat flour that I sifted using a simple kitchen sieve. So I've removed the coarsest parts of the bran. It looks very nice on the surface. I make these rolls by rolling them in flour with the end facing up where the dough closes, and then placing them on my baking sheet with the end facing up. The other 4 I prepare in the usual way. For those, the seam is on the bottom. I place them like that, and later I'll make a small cut on top, but you'll see that. Now I have the tray here with the rolls that I will later score along the longitudinal axis. They are lying on the seam. And here you can clearly see that I have the flour on top. You can also see the seam here. They will crack open on their own and rise through the cut. Now I'll let them proof until they reach about 3/4 of their final rise. That means I hardly pressed any of the proofing out beforehand. So I don't need a long resting time for the shaped pieces now. At room temperature, I estimate about 15-20 minutes at most, and then I can put them in the oven. Of course, again with steam. My oven is set to 220 degrees, and that's the temperature I'll bake them at. It's important that I cover them now, and as soon as they're ready, meaning they're not fully risen yet, but only about 3/4 of the way, I put them in the oven. I'll be able to tell later, and I'll show you how using the finger test. That's a very good way to see it. But for now, they'll get a little cover. The whole grain rolls have now reached exactly the right level of proofing. They're going into the oven now. As you can see, they've risen nicely. Now I'm going to make a bold slash across the top. That one gets another bold slash. Just as they are, they're going in now with steam, and then you'll be able to see how beautifully they'll rise. The whole grain rolls have now been in the oven for 21 minutes. They're done. You can hear it, and they're nice and crispy. I hope you can hear that too. Whole grain rolls as such can never get as big as regular wheat rolls. That's just not possible with whole grain flours in general, whether it's rye or wheat doughs. If you want them to be even bigger, more puffed up or something like that, you should simply add 100 grams of regular wheat flour to the recipe and leave out 100 grams of whole grain flour, but then they won't be pure whole grain rolls anymore. The sourdough in these whole grain rolls is meant to give the whole thing even more flavor. By the way, it's a rye-based sourdough, but that doesn't matter when using whole wheat flour. And overall, it gives the structure a bit of stability and nicely affects the crust. I hope you enjoyed my little video. Have fun baking it yourself. Thanks for watching, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time on our channel. Bye.